Good evening. It's Saturday, the 26th of July. You're tuned in to our 10 p.m. newscast coming to you from ARIRANG's news centre in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story tonight, the two-day early voting period for the July 30th by-elections ended earlier this Saturday evening. Voter turnout was just shy of 8%, 7.98% to be exact, higher than both the by-elections last year. The turnout in by-elections is typically quite low in Korea, and the National Election Commission had said it expected the early voter turnout to be around 6%, so 2 percentage points higher. Voters could cast their ballots in the 15 constituencies up for grabs without prior registration. Korea's rival parties are pressing ahead with efforts to strengthen voter support ahead of Wednesday's election day. The ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy have been focusing on districts in the capital, Seoul, and its surrounding areas, as they are considered a barometer of public sentiment. The polls carry extra weight this year because a total of 15 parliamentary seats are up for grabs. This is the largest number for a by-election. Now, in economic news, Korea's finance minister has told companies that they need not worry too much about the government's plan to tax corporate cash reserves. Choi Kyung-hwan says firms that use their money in a socially responsible way will avoid the tax altogether. Ji Myung-gil reports.
Korea will introduce a new tax on companies' cash reserves to get them spending again as the government looks to breathe life into Korea's sputtering economy. Speaking at a forum hosted by the Federation of Korean Industries on Saturday, Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan urged the nation's leading businesses to start spending their internal reserves.
Suppose the net profit is 100. Then companies should use 70 on investments, dividends, and wages. Then companies will face no additional taxation.
The government has been considering this measure for some time. It hopes that with more disposable income, households will increase their spending and consumption, boosting the economy. The finance minister said the new tax rate would be around the 3% level. Over the last 5 years, the Korean government has cut corporate tax rates from 25% to 22%. Korea's business community says companies need cash reserves to deal with potential uncertainties in the future. They say most of the money set aside has already been earmarked for use to buy land, buildings, build plants, and purchase production facilities. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
Now, prosecutors have launched a probe into the eldest son of the late owner of the Seoul-Ho ferry. Yoo Dae-gyun was arrested Friday evening in a small apartment he was holed up in Yongin, a city south of Seoul. The 44-year-old son of Yoo Byung-an is being held on suspicion of embezzlement related to April's sinking that killed over 300 people. Park Soo-kyung, a 34-year-old woman, is also being held over suspicions she helped Yoo Dae-gyun avoid the authorities. Prosecutors plan to apply for court-issued arrest warrants for both of them on Sunday. The focus of the probe is on whether the younger Yoo took part in the management of Chonghae-jin Marine, the company that operated the sunken ferry. Now, these arrests came a matter of hours, in fact, after the state agency-led autopsy failed to determine the cause of death of Yoo Byung-an because his body was far too badly decomposed. Yoo Byung-an, who disappeared shortly after the ferry disaster, was found dead last month in an orchard you can see there in southwestern Korea. The two Koreas will mark the 61st anniversary on Sunday of the signing of an armistice agreement that ended the Korean War. But a day before the anniversary, North Korea has threatened to lash out at the United States if it continues what it calls its hostile policies against the North. In an editorial Saturday in North Korea's main national daily, the Nodong Shinmun, Pyongyang said the US is targeting the North with its high-tech military equipment and military drills in the area. It also said that if the US took part in a second Korean war, the North Korean military would crush their invading forces. The United States, France and Australia have reportedly called for the UN Security Council to deal with North Korea's human rights violations. In a report Saturday, the Voice of America said the three countries sent a joint letter to the President of the Security Council last Thursday, which called on the Council to formally discuss a report by the UN Commission of Inquiry on human rights violations in the reclusive state. Now, this COI report, published back in May, accused North Korea of, quote, systematic, widespread and grave violations of human rights. It also said the regime's leadership should face trial at the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. Now, South Korea's economy is on shaky ground these days, but our neighbour across the East Sea seems to be having an even tougher time. Japan logged yet another trade deficit last month. This pushes down its total trade loss for the first quarter to an all-time high loss. Recent polls also show that many Japanese citizens aren't bowled over with the Prime Minister's economic policies either. Kim Min-ji reports.
The Japanese economy isn't faring all that well. The nation's trade deficit dipped to $8 billion in June, its 24th straight month of decline, the longest downward trend seen since data began being compiled in 1979. The trade loss was attributed to a slide in outbound shipments and the inflated prices of oil imports. For the first half as a whole, the trade deficit stood at a record high of nearly $76 billion, a jump of about $30 billion from a year earlier.
Despite the weak yen, more companies are opening overseas bases, so it's understandable that exports are falling.
The increase in consumption tax in April has also hurt spending, and despite a wage hike, it doesn't seem to be helping. Some say that Abenomics has lost its impact and Japanese citizens are speaking out. According to a recent survey conducted by the Sankei Shimbun, 47% of Japanese residents were negative about Abenomics, while less than 40% were positive.
I'm sure listed firms will see an increase in wages. I wish this were the case in small and mid-sized companies too.
The Japanese Treasury is expecting deficits in both trade and budget this year, which only serve to worsen the country's economic woes. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Now, the Chinese Navy is set to hold live fire drills for 5 days starting on Tuesday. Chinese media reports the drills will be held simultaneously in the Bohai Sea, the West Sea and the East China Sea, where China is locked in a bitter maritime dispute with Japan. The navies and military planes of both nations aggressively patrol the disputed islands known as Diaoyu in China and the Senkakus by Japan. Ships and fishing boats will be prohibited from entering waters where the live ammunition drills are taking place. The naval exercises are partially aimed at a show of strength following Japan's move to expand its military presence in the region. Turning now to the latest on the crisis in the Middle East. A tenuous 12-hour humanitarian ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is in effect in Gaza, and it is holding. The Israeli Defense Forces say Israeli troops will, however, continue to locate and neutralize tunnels used by Hamas militants during this period. Hamas said it agreed to the lull to allow civilians to receive aid and evacuate to safer areas. Generally, though, the temporary pause is unlikely to lead to an end in the hostilities. Now, at least 1,000 Palestinians, including many women and children, have been killed and more than 6,000 wounded over the past 19 days. Israeli strikes have also destroyed countless homes and displaced tens of thousands fleeing the fighting. 38 Israelis, mostly soldiers, have been killed. Now, they may look innocuous enough, but manhole covers can actually be extremely dangerous during times of heavy rainfall. To raise public awareness about some of the potential perils, researchers here in Korea have conducted an experiment to demonstrate just how dangerous they can be to pedestrians and passing vehicles. Our Son Jung-in reports.
A city bus in Changwon, Gyeongsangnam-do province with passengers on board suddenly leaves the ground and falls back down. It was caused by a manhole cover beneath the bus being ejected into the air because of water pressure built up due to heavy rain. An experiment was carried out to see how big a danger manholes on the roads pose during the rainy season. Researchers parked the car on top of a metal lid and poured 50 millimeters of rain per hour on top of the cover. Moments later, some water gushed out through the holes, and it is not long before the metal lid starts to rattle and the car on top begins to shake. Pedestrians should take precautions too, as rain at 30 millimeters per hour is strong enough to lift up a 40-kilogram manhole cover. Experts advise people to stay away from any cover that seems unstable.
It takes only 30 seconds for a manhole cover to burst open after it starts to rattle. People should evacuate the area immediately.
Experts warn citizens in the low-lying districts to take extra caution as the backward flow of water into manholes happens more frequently there. 손정인, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now, finally, taking a look at your weekend weather. Most of the country is under cloudy skies tonight. It will be a mild night with the overnight low only dipping to 19 degrees Celsius in Seoul. Sunday will be another hot day under partly cloudy skies with highs in the low 30s nationwide, and there is no rain in the forecast for the central region. Let's take a look at the weather conditions wherever you are in the world. And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. For more of the latest stories, don't forget to check out our website, arirang.co.kr/news. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend. Goodbye.